Hello everybody and welcome back to another WARNO tier list, as this time we go over the units that are categorized as anti-tank, both from the infantry tab and the tank tab, as they are interfering a lot with each other, and they both are also too low in numbers that an individual list would make sense right now. So as you pick one or the other often anyways, I thought mixing them both makes sense here, putting them in the same tier list, as they usually fight for the same kind of slots in your deck as well. And as always, the ranking goes S to D tier, D tier being you really shouldn't play it at all, C tier being you can play it but it's not really improving your deck, B tier is it's pretty fine there, it's what you usually want to play, A tier is it is a good unit, really solid in cost efficiency, and S tier is it's a game changer and a really decisive factor in the decks that get access to it. So we start with the Recoilless Rifles here, that can be both used as fire support and anti-tank. They all have decent AP, and we start with NATO, then we go to Soviets, that's the same for all the other categories here as well. And we start with the L6 Wombat. And the Wombat is pretty mediocre. It only has 15 penetration, and it has a relatively low fire rate as well, only 7 rounds per minute. The HE is pretty solid, but the range of all the Recoilless Rifles nowadays is lower than an autocannon, so they struggle when the enemy comes around with autocannon vehicles, so you need to get an ambush there, and with 15 you don't one-shot things with 2 frontal armor or more, and that's an issue. You don't one-shot IFVs with this, and you want to one-shot IFVs with a unit that only has 7 rounds per minute and 35% accuracy, because otherwise you don't really do much there. You won't get 2 consecutive hits. So this is only useful as a fire support unit. For that, it's priced okay. It has more range than the small MGs and so on, but its anti-tank capabilities are pretty mediocre. With heat, at least, it means that it can damage everything, but usually you shouldn't go for this. I would put it into low C tier here. And then we come to the other NATO one, which is in a lot of nations. France has it, Germany has it, USA has it, and that is the M40A1. And that one costs you 10 points more, whilst having actually lower HE. Like, the Wombat has the bigger shell, and that helps out the Wombat being an okay fire support. That's why it's in C tier and not D tier. The good thing about the M40 though, it one-shots IFVs. At least the ones with 3 frontal armor, as it has 17 pen. 17 pen also helping out against a good couple of tanks, dealing out okay damage. And it still has a lower rate of fire and a lower accuracy though. So C tier here, but a bit better than the Wombat because of it can one-shot 3 frontal armor units kind of thing, which can play a decent role in some decks. So M40 here going into C tier. Then we come to the Soviet Recoilless Rifles with the newest addition to the whole, and that's the Reds B11. And that one costs the same as the Wombat, but being just flat out worse. It has the same terrible pen of 15 for this kind of unit, and the same low rate of fire of 7 rounds per minute and low accuracy of 35, but with reservist trait on top, and it has the HE of the M40. So low HE, and due to the reservist traits, a lot of other big debuffs, and that just makes it a unit that you absolutely never should use. This unit is not really helpful in any situation for its price point. Like, this thing will not be cost efficient for you outside of some real big fringe cases. So D tier here for the Res B11. And then we come to the SPG9, which has 2 variants that cost 5 points different, because one is forward deploy, the other one is not. And the SPG9 has lower pen and lower HE, but it has a higher rate of fire, and that higher rate of fire helps it out. As that means it can get a couple more shots out, can get consecutive shot bonuses on the accuracy with that as well, and that makes it better than the Wombat in my eyes. Though with 14 pen, it also means that it can't one-shot anything either, so it's still not great. I would say it's really similar to the M40 here in category, and yeah, a lower C tier, mid C tier unit here as well. And the SPG9 forward deployment, at least here, the extra range and the forward deployment can actually be nice to ambush some and push back some autocannon recon cars. But the extra 5 points here still don't really make it worthwhile, so I would put them here behind these guys. And to finish off the Recoilless Rifle units, we go with the support ones, which we have a couple of, starting with the Wombat on the Rover. And that is just a Rover with a Wombat on top. It has 15 rounds, so decent amount of ammo. But yeah, pays 5 points extra. And the limited range. It's a Wombat. The Rover is a good transport, but you can't really ambush the enemy that easily, and you can't one-shot them. So with the limited range of 1,400, I still don't believe it's super worthwhile. And then the Gurkha one pays 5 points extra for being airliftable and having the Resolute trait, and that's 2 traits that don't help you at all. So I actually would even put that into D tier, because 5 points is just too cost inefficient at 45 points, so yeah, to D tier they go. And then we come to the Mule with the M40. And that one actually gets cheaper than the M40. Like here you go 5 points up, here you go 5 points down. And the Mule is not a great platform, only 40 kmh off-road speed. That's why it's cheaper, but at least you get a pretty cheap unit here. So I would put that into higher C tier. The National Guard one, unfortunately, has the National Guard Reservist trait, so that goes behind all of this, and behind the Rover Wombat even, I would say, due to the Reservist trait. But yeah, there we go. And then we have the SPG9s on UATs in all 3 nations. In East Germany, it costs 45 points without the forward deployment, so I would have put those even worse. But as they're all UATs at 45 points with SPG9s, I would put them around the same spot, and that would be around here. Like, they get the forward deployment here, so that helps something. But yeah, it's not quite the same as here. You don't get a real discount, so yeah, let's C tier unit. That is not amazing. And that finishes off the Recoilless Rifle part and gets us into missile territory, as we have a good couple of ATGMs to go through. And the first one is a fun one, as it is the weirdest out of the bunch, the Marina Dragon 1. Dragon 1, we have a good couple in the game, but usually they come as a part of an infantry squad. As an infantry squad ATGM, and this one here has the same low range, which is 1,400 meters, which for a squad AT weapon is fine, but for a dedicated team that wants to stay away as far as possible from the enemy, having lower range and only having 2 hit points, having lower range than an IV's autocannon is not fine. And the only compensation that it gets for all of this is, because it has a tripod, it gets higher accuracy. It goes up to 60%, which is good accuracy, but you fire a terrible missile. It only deals 14 damage, it can't one-shot anything, and only has 1,400 meter range, and you only have 2 hit points. The Resolute trait doesn't really matter, because you implode in a second anyways. So yes, it's also pretty cheap, but to really be the spam potential that you want out of a unit like that, that might still then be worthwhile investing a slot into it. It would have had to go down to 15 points or so. As it is, I would put it into D tier here as a unit that you really should avoid. It's an interesting idea, but it just doesn't work out. It's a fun meme, but not more than that. Then we stay with the Europeans, and we come to the Milan 1s. And the Milan 1 is pretty classic ATGM, but the issue of the Milans is that compared to the other ATGM teams, it has pretty low range. Like, it is on the low end with only 2,450 meters, and that means that it can't outrange tanks by all that much, and the long-range tanks even can often get into range and start aiming before your missile hits them, and that's an issue. You can't just cover whole open areas as easily. It is pretty cheap. 17 pen is also slightly too low to one-shot all the IFVs. 18 pen is the real fun sweet spot there, where you nearly one-shot all of them and still be pretty cost efficient. 17, you don't quite one-shot all of them, and against BMP2s that can be, for example, pretty painful. So I would put that into low B tier still. It's uh, pretty cheap, and yeah, 45% accuracy is not great either, but it does an okay job. The forward deploy one for the Belgians costing only 50 points, and for the French is obviously a nice good bit better that you don't pay any extra price for it. You lose a bit of availability, but the cost efficiency here is just better, and that's why I would put them up on top of these guys in B tier. Then we have the Milan 2, which is a good bit more expensive, but that's because it deals a lot of damage. Still only 2 hit points, still short range, only 5% more accuracy. 50% is not amazing, but everything has to fear the Milan 2. Nothing can just eat Milan 2s. 34 pen means that even against the heaviest tanks, you deal a significant amount of damage. And you can one-shot a good amount of tanks and all IFVs out there. And that makes this one a solid high B tier unit. The teams are still vulnerable to getting overrun, but yeah, they do a good job. The Milan 2 Para, yeah, you pay 5 points, but that's an okay price difference here, so I would set that up top. But yeah, that's the European Milan here covered. There's one extra one that you could mention with the Masserine Milan 2, which pays 5 point extra for the French for having Resolute. That's not worth it. Just go with the normal Milan 2. But yeah, that's about it. And then we have the American TOW family, starting with the National Guard TOW. And the National Guard TOW pays 5 points extra compared to the Para Milan for a missile that has slightly more range but less pen. It only one-shots 2 frontal armor units because it has 16 damage. You need 14 difference to one-shot something with heat damage calculation. And that means that it is a lot weaker against the standard IFV families. The 50% accuracy isn't really there either because it is National Guard. The Reservist puts that down to 45%, so it only has range and an hit point more, but loses, but has the Reservist trait, which gives it a couple of other negatives as well, and loses the one pen that is actually pretty relevant here. So I would put that into C tier. You can still use it. The extra range is helpful, and the 3 hit points are nice as well for the price point. It can actually prawl a bit, but as it's National Guard, yeah, it means that you don't really want to prawl because with the Reservist it will eat stress quickly. So C tier here it goes. And then we have the Ito, and the Ito is a 20 damage ATGM. It has good range and it has good accuracy. This thing is a really reliable thing. Also has 3 hit points. It pays 5 points more than the Milan 2, while not being able to damage the high level tanks, but it is more reliable with its better accuracy and better range. And it still one-shots all IFVs, and that's the more important threshold there for me, especially as the Milan 2 also slightly doesn't one-shot 11 frontal armor tanks, which are pretty common. So the Ito, I would put around here with the Milan. Fort deploy slightly better. Like it's on a similar level. Yeah, it's a trade-off there. The extra hit point is nice against some artillery landing close by, in brawls and so on. The extra accuracy is real nice. So yeah, it's a bit more reliable, but it trades off the high damage potential. And then the National Guard Ito trades 5 points for eating the Reservist trait. And the Reservist trait here is annoying. The aim time goes up, the accuracy goes down, and if it would be 10 points cheaper, it would be better. If it with 5 points, I think it's weaker. I would put it around here, and yeah, just leave it there. And then we have the TOW 2, and the TOW 2 is a pretty good missile, and I would put the TOW 2 up here. TOW 2 is an A tier unit, and it does the damage that you want it to do. 25 damage, one shots 11 frontal armor tanks, which is something like a T-55 or some of the AMXs and so on. And that is big. That is really big. TOW 2 costs you 100 points though, but the 3 hit points and the 65% accuracy, the good range, still means it's pretty good. It's not cheap enough to be an S tier unit, and you don't get the availability that you really want on them either. It's only 3 per card, so you have some trade-offs there. And the 100 points, like, it's not cheap, but it does the job really reliable. Like, no tank, no ILV, no vehicle really can eat one of those and be feeling fine afterwards. With 25, it deals good damage, even against a T80U or an M1A1HA. And that is nice. And then the TOW2A comes in with tandem rounds. That's the only thing it gets. It pays 5 points for it. And that's an edge case edition that doesn't help you everywhere, and paying 5 points for that, I think it's a bit weaker. But in general, it mostly does the same, and 5 points at this price point also aren't that impactful, so I would say it's similar. Just usually the normal TOW2 does just fine. Then we come to the Soviet family of ATGMs, and we start with the Fagot. And the Fagot is similar in stats to the Milan one. It has the same range, it has the same pen. It gets 5% more accuracy, but it pays 5 points more. And paying 5 points more there feels a bit rough for 5% more accuracy at this price point. Like for tanks that cost above 100, 5 points for 5% accuracy, that's an okay trade. And below 100 points, that's a big percentage jump, and not really worth it on a 17-point missile. So I would put these into high C tier, below the Milan one, as they also have the limited range, and then you often get shot at. So yeah, it's still a decent missile. It's not a great missile though. And then we come to the other Soviet ATGMs, where we have Conkers and the Conkers M. And the Conkers, that is 20 damage missile that has good range. And it costs 15 points less than the Ito. The Ito gets a bit better accuracy. The Ito gets 1 extra hit points. But I still think the Conkers is the best B tier missile here, with just the cost efficiency on it. Like 65 points for a long range missile that can one-shot all IVs is nice. So that is pretty decent, and that's the main target for ATGMs as well. You stress out tanks enough that tanks don't want to eat these anyways, and you still deal a bit of damage against most tanks. That is more than 1 with the 20 pen on these. So yeah, you can side shot, kill a decent amount of tanks and so on. So Conkers, for the price point, a really solid and efficient unit, and I would put that on high end of B tier. Not quite A tier, but close by. And then the Conkers M, that pays 15 points extra for getting 5% more accuracy, going up to 55, and going up to 23 damage. So compared to a Milan, it gets 1 less damage, gets the same accuracy, and gets extra range. And with range also comes a bit of accuracy stacking. That's something that always plays a bit in there as well, but not all that much here. So it's a bit of a trade-off. I would put it here as it has the tandem round as well, so that's a nice slight addition as well. I would put it into high B tier as well with the Conkers, and go with this above the Itos and the Milans. And yeah, the Milan ones are, as I said, a slight bit better maybe than these guys. And then we come to the anti-tank guns. You have some other airborne additions here as well. Put in the Milan one here because it's the same price. So, and this one here just as a representation that for all the other airborne things, it's kind of a similar thing. Like the airborne TOW2 is a bit better. The airborne Conquerors and Fagots are similar. The Fagot one also, I believe, is paying 5 points extra, unlike the Milan one. So that's just around here as well, paying 60 points for that. Doesn't feel great, but yeah, it is what it is. And then we come to the AT guns, which are pretty interesting, as they there we start with a one that is really old. And AT guns have a lot of overlapping usually with the Recoilless Rifles. Their deficit is they can't enter buildings, so that they can only be put into tree lines or the open field, but you usually want to have them in tree lines to profit from their better stealth. And the one that we start with is the East German CIS 2. And usually, as I said, AT guns can also be used as fire support. And this thing has more range than a recoilless rifle, but it can't be used as fire support. It doesn't have HE rounds, and it only has 1750 meter range, which means all tanks out there outrange it. And it only has 10 pen, and those are kinetic, so it can't even damage everything frontally. And it can't even really deal much damage to light vehicles with the 10 damage. Its accuracy is pretty low as well. The only good thing is rate of fire, but as you can't really open up against a lot of things, that doesn't help you. And for 30 points, that is an issue. So I would put this into D tier. The extra range, I still think, makes it better in these kind of units. Like, there is a bit of a use case there, maybe, in some really, really specific matchups. But in general, stay clear of this. This doesn't really do the job you want it to do, unless the enemy is spamming you APCs. And even then, it might not be amazing in its efficiency. Then we come to a family of AT guns that are all pretty similar. The K52, D44, D48. And yeah, we have the K52 here as the cheapest one. It's having basically the same stats as the D44, only that it doesn't have the Resolute or the Forward Deploy here, but it is cheaper. And usually as an AT gun, you have 3 hit points, you can brawl a bit, but you usually don't want to brawl. So the 5 points cheaper here compared to Resolute, I think, are above. The stats of all of these are 1425 meter range and 14 pen. 14 pen with kinetic means that you don't one-shot anything. The 1925 meter range means that things have to get somewhat close to you before you can start firing. You do decent damage from the side shots and so on, and the good stealth helps out a good bit with these getting some shots off, but getting enough kills of these is not easy. They have a bit of a fire support role as well. The 10 rates of fire is quite nice as well, but I still don't believe that these are great. I would put them here into C tier, with the D4485 being weaker than the K52 because of the higher price, and this one having forward deployment having a bit of an extra use case. Then we have the Polish one, which is interesting as it gets extra pen. It does have the same HE stats, the same range, and the same rate of fire, but the D48 gets 16 pen, and that means that it can damage a good bit more tanks, and it gets closer to one-shotting IFVs. And if they get close enough, you one-shot them quite easily. So the D48 here, I think that is worth it. And I would put it around here, slightly above this. And then we have another somewhat similar unit with the KSM 65, which has the same stats penetration-wise as the D48, and the same range and accuracy, or no, slightly better accuracy with 55%. Issue is that it has one lower rate of fire, but it has a bit more HE as well. So fire support-wise, it's pretty much on point with the others here. It goes from 0.9 HE to 1 HE, but goes from 10 to 9 rate of fire. So yeah, if you multiply both numbers, you come at the same. So that is the same there as well, and it is pretty close there to the D48 here. It has 3 hit points, good stealth, and it has the 16 pen with better accuracy, but lower rate of fire. So maybe even slightly above, as these are all pretty close. And then we come to a AT gun that is a bit more interesting than the others, as this is a hard-hitting one. The 125 millimeter Sprut B, the 2A45M, as this is the most modern one. It even has a slight motorization in real life that unfortunately is not quite represented in WARNO. I wish it would have a slight buff in off-road speed, like it wouldn't go fast anywhere, but going from 9 kilometers off-road on its own to 12 or so would be fun. Unfortunately not the case. But the real important thing about this thing is it's a 125 millimeter gun that has the same penetration stats of the high-end TADUDs, with its range being limited to 1925. That means at 1925 meter range, it has 23 penetration. And that means it can one-shot a lot of things, like it one-shots all the IVs out there, and it also can deal a lot of damage to tanks. It has a good rate of fire of 9. Accuracy is still a bit low. HE is good, but you don't really want to use this as a fire support unit all that much because it costs a bit more. And the low range and the low accuracy, I think, would still only put it into B tier here, into lower B and B tier, as artillery can kill this thing quite quickly still, and it gets pretty cost efficient in this scenario. And you can still overwhelm it with outranging it by tanks and so on. It only works in some specific spots, but there it works pretty nice. So it's an interesting little unit, but it's 80-point Brethren in the Rapira that doesn't quite have the same penetration, but has another nice little addition, is a bit better. As the MT-12 Rapira that we got both for the Soviets and the East Germans is a 100mm AT gun with 10 rounds per minute. The main gun already a bit better, 2,100 meter range, unlike the others that are at 1,925. So the main gun already can help out with fire support from a bit further away, can engage tanks and IFVs especially with its 10 rounds per minute AT gun from a bit further away. So that is already nice, especially the extra fire support range there. Especially with good stealth, sometimes meaning that the enemy just doesn't see you, even if you get fire support against their infantry with it. But the more important part is the second part, the ATGM on this. You get a Bastion 9 M117, 18 penetration, 2,800 meter, 60% accuracy, fast flying ATGM. And this is even better than this missile on an IFV or a tank. Because, first of all, it has good stealth, so the enemy on long range might not even be able to see it, because even with some recon, sometimes they can't quite spot you at that distance with good stealth. And then they also can't fire back with ATGMs at you, so they have to get into gun range, and with IFVs, they have to get into autocannon range before they can retaliate on you, even if they spot you. So you can outrange them by a lot. And this thing can control open fields really, really nicely. Usually on open fields you have ATGMs versus ATGM duels, but ATGMs don't work against this, whilst it still works as an ATGM tool. So that makes a Rapira a really good unit. I would put it into A tier. It was a bit cheaper in the past, then it was S tier, similar to the TOW 2. Nowadays, it's pretty easy to kill with artillery, and then it's pretty cost inefficient. Like, artillery against it is quite efficient, so you want to be careful there. And if it gets overwhelmed in numbers, it still gets shut down quite quickly. So yeah, be careful where you place it and so on, and keep the transport close by so that you can reposition it. But in general, the Rapira is a fantastic little unit. And yeah, the long-range Bastion that one-shots most IFVs with its 18 pen is great. And yeah, that's the AT guns on the towed AT guns. And that brings us to AT guns in vehicles, where we start with the German and the Belgians, as they have the Kanonenjagdpanzer, or the Jagdpanzer Kanone 90, the YPK 90 here for the Belgians. And you can see these have a 10-point difference. They are the same little chassis, and they have the same base gun, the 90mm gun that has 14 pen at 1,925 meter range, or in the shape of the Belgian one, 13 pen at 2,100 meter range, as it has a slight range buff and an accuracy buff because it has a better rangefinder added on top. And it gets that, which would be a 10-point jump, plus it doesn't have the reservist trait. So I think the Belgian one is a good bit better. It's a mediocre stealth vehicle, which is nice for a gun vehicle as well. Can help out with HE rounds. It has a good 10 rounds per minute. So as a tank, it works okay with that. It only has 6 frontal armor, which means that it will take a lot of damage, but it helps out not quite getting one-shot by a good amount of cannons and even some ATGMs, though the 20 pen ones still just about kill it with the Ito and the Conkers, so you still have to be a bit careful there. But the extra range, meaning that you can ambush a bit easier because the enemy might not be in spotting range and so on, and the extra accuracy and so on, help out the Belgian one, in my eyes, to go into low B tier territory, whilst the German one, I would put around here. It's 40 points, it's still pretty cheap. the penetration of this thing is not amazing, but so it needs a couple of hits against everything as well. But you can get good enough numbers around, and then just get some damage out there. And then we have the Polish variant with the ASU 85, and that one is same rate of fire, same range. It as the Canon Jagdpanzer. It has the lower range compared to the YPK 90, but it has slightly better HE, and it has especially important better penetration. It has 16 pen on a mediocre stealth unit, and that means it actually can ambush. It doesn't have the smoke, so I don't think it's much better because you can't ambush and then if the enemy spots, just smoke off, disengage. You have to kill the enemy with the ambush, or at least get yourself into advantage that you then win the gun duel. But it can do that, and that's why I would say the ASU 85 here, 50 points. It's a pretty fine unit. 16 pen on that is quite nice with the mediocre stealth together. So that's the gun ones, and that brings us to jeeps and other similar units, light wheeled units with ATGMs on top. And we start with a French Milan 1 carrier, and that is the M201. That gets a Milan 1 with 4 rounds, whilst it's only Milan 1s. That's pretty cheap. It is a reservist unit though, and that's why it's 5 points cheaper than its German counterpart that basically does the same with more off-road speed as well though. So reservist plus lower off-road speed for 5 points. So these two units are pretty similar, Oldest Milan and the M201 Milan. And I think as they are cheaper than the normal Milan ones, I would put them above these guys. Like, I think those are pretty good B tier units. And let's stay with Milans here before we get to the Americans, as we have a couple more Milan vehicles to go through. We go with the Rover Milan, Iltis Milan, P4 Milan here. Those are all the Milan 2 units. They are all pretty interchangeable. The German ones, or the Belgian ones rather, with the Iltis for the Belgians having the same off-road speed as the P4, and then you have the British ones coming around with the Rover, which has the same off-road speed as well. So they're all basically the same unit, same off-road speed, good stealth, Milan 2, and all of those is pretty good. You still have a bit of a range issue with these, but you can get close enough. You can kite the enemy with this a lot easier than with other units. You don't have smoke, and you don't want to get shot at all, but you get for 50 points. Like, you save 25 points compared to the infantry variant. And the only deficit is that you can't enter buildings, and that's about it. I think you get 2 less rounds with only 4 against 6. Yeah, 4 against 6. So that's the 2 small deficits, but paying 50% less whilst being agile, being mobile on its own, like this costs 95 with the transport. You nearly get 2 of these Iltises for that. So I think these are fantastic A tier units here, really saving you a lot on something that can kill a lot of units and putting them up there. And I think the 5 points extra for the forward deploy here, I would just put them around the same spot here. So yeah, these guys go there. Then we have the ATMP Milan, and that one has 9 rounds, which it pays for. It goes up to 17 points, so it pays 20 points for 5 rounds. And that's not quite on par, especially as it's also a bit slower. So I think this one here goes into B tier. It's still a discount compared to the normal Milan, but not by a lot. And yeah, it's not as cost efficient as the one up there. Like, you can buy this, and you can buy this Iltis Milan with a supply truck next to it for the same price as this, basically. So it's not really worthwhile. And then you get the National Guard ITOs and some other tow units here. Got a couple of those to go through. And those, the National Guard one, we have a good couple of, with the ITO here, 50 points, normal ITO, 80 points, the ITO National Guard coming in at 75 points, so you save the same amount. Discount, it still has the reservist compared to these guys, and doesn't quite have the same high damage output. It also is slower off-road. It's only a 65 kilometers road speed unit, so I think it's a bit weaker. And I think that puts it a bit behind it here because it can't kite tanks and so on with its 65%, 65 kmh speed. Like, can't really kite, and that makes the Milan units here a good bit better. And the Muley Tow is the next unit, and that one is a bit better as it gets none of the reservist traits, or actually, well, it gets 6 rounds. Like, that's the nice thing here. Like, it pays the extra price for the rounds, and it doesn't have the reservist trait. It's pretty slow off-road though with 40, so you really have to keep it around 3 lines as well. I actually would even put these guys around like this. And yeah, it's still a decent unit though, hitting hard. And then the Krakatoa only has 5 rounds, so 1 round less, and only gets 10 more road speed whilst paying 5 points extra. So I think this just drops into B tier here again. That's not quite up there with the other guys in cost efficiency. It still is a good missile, the Ito, but it doesn't quite have the same hit capabilities. And then we have the Humvee Tows, and those come with 4 deploy or normal variant, and I think those are great as well. You pay 20 points less for a pretty agile unit, 8 rounds, so you get even more rounds than a normal TOW 2 team, whilst paying less, and you have 6 rounds, 6 hit points, so you can survive an artillery close by hit sometimes, or a bit of damage from an autocannon, though, or HMG, though you usually don't want to be caught by that. But I think those are then even a slight bit better than the P4s. They have a bit lower off-road speed of only 75, but that's just about enough to kite. So yeah, A tier here for the Humvee Tows, as those hit pretty hard. And then we come to our first S tier unit here, as we have the COCV GLH, and that one really does the damage, as it has the best ATGM missile on the ground. The Hellfires coming in with 24 damage. That's second best, next to the TOW, but it has extra accuracy with 70%, so this thing basically never misses. It has 2,800 meter range, so it outranges everything, and it flies faster than everything as well, so it means that with it flying faster than everything, your missile always hits first. Your missile also does a lot of suppression, so you mostly stun even with a miss. So enemy can't ATGM you back. So it's kind of similar to what the Rapier does, only that you deal a lot more damage and you one-hit a lot more things. Plus, your missile flies even faster. Plus, you are a platform that can escape on its own. It's 60 kilometers off-road, so it's not quite amazing, but if you put this thing into the right spot, the enemy just can't touch it, and they will take a lot of damage from it if they try to push any open field where this thing is present. So it's an S tier unit. It was S plus tier kinda when it had also the lower aim time of the helicopter Hellfires, for which it had for a while. Now it has the same 2.2 second aim time as all other ATGMs, so its advantage at firing its missile before everything and getting it on target way faster is not quite as massive as it was before, but it's still there, and it still keeps this thing in S tier here. And then we come to the VLRA Milan, and the VLRA, I just missed that, so that's why we gotta cover this here now. As this also here has to go down there. The VLRA Milan has a bit more rounds, but it doesn't have the good stealth of the other Milans, and that's a big deficit. It's a big truck, that's why it doesn't have the good stealth, and it's 5 points more expensive for 2 more rounds. So yeah, I actually think this is the stealth is pretty important on these kind of things, so it drops this thing down quite a bit. So VLRA Milan there going around, and then the Soviet counterparts starting, or the PAC counterparts starting with the Fagot launcher, and that one is pretty similar here between these guys. We have the UATS Fagot, and that one goes up. Yeah, that one has the similar stats to the Iltis Milan, so goes around here and get the decent amount of damage there. It only has 4 rounds per minute, 50% accuracy, so actually even a bit better than the Iltis Milan because it gets the same price here, but it's having the 5% more accuracy, so this time around it's a bit better. The Luat's Fagot is having 1 less round, only, oh no, actually has 4 rounds as well. That was a mistake by me. Yeah, it's same performance of the Luats. The Iltis is still faster, so that's maybe, like, they are pretty much on par. And this thing here goes there as well. Then we have a 4th deploy variant of all of these guys, which, yeah, would put around there as well. No big difference. And then we have the Conkers variant, and the Conkers variant, that's pretty decent as well. Comes only as 4 deployed, and with that, it is pretty solid. It is slower off-road, and it is paying extra, so I think put it above these guys. 20 damage. It's playing extra for the range and so on. It's not getting quite a compared to the Milan, the Conkers versus Milan 2. It doesn't quite get the discount, so it's not as good as the Para P4 Milan here, but it is an okay unit here nonetheless. This one we already covered, so that gets us to the wheeled but slightly armored variants. And there we start with the one NATO variant that we can put in here, and that's the VAB Mephisto. And the VAB Mephisto is a little French unit with a missile that we haven't covered yet, and that is the Hot 2. And the Hot 2 is the best European missile in the game, ATGM on the ground, as it is 24 damage, 2625 meter range, so it has more range than the Milans, and it has the same accuracy than the TOW 2 with 65%. So the only thing it has less is 1 damage less. And this thing comes with 12 rounds, comes with 85 kilometers of road speed, and it costs the same as the Humvees. It is faster than the Humvee, it has armor, it doesn't have the good stealth, and it has 1 less damage on the missile. So it is pretty comparable. Like, the armor versus the stealth thing is a trade-off. The armor and the hit points. And the better off-road speed is nice as well. And this thing is really good. The missiles are scary. You can kite with this really nicely. And this is the one French unit that you want to use for kiting with missiles. And it's both good in the divisions that it gets 5th and 152nd. One of the units in 152nd, one of the few that actually can kill enemy vehicles quite nicely. And with that, it goes in quite well. Doesn't have smoke or anything, but yeah, for 80 points, that missile is great. And then we come to the Malyutka family, the BRDM 2s with Malyutkas. We have a lot of those in all the nations, and then we have the BRDM with Conkers and Conkers M as well. The BRDM here, the wheeled Soviet carrier for all the missiles. The Malyutka is a terrible missile. The Malyutka comes with okay range, actually okay accuracy, low pen, 17 pen like these guys, but it flies so frustratingly slow. So this thing doesn't win a ATGM duel. It always gets hit first, because even if it aims first a bit faster, the missiles fly so slowly that it doesn't get there. The only good thing that it has for it, it's the good stealth. So, and they carry 18 missiles. Like, that's the good thing about these. The reservist one, obviously, even having a bit lower aim time for 5 points, I would say it's a bit weaker than the Polish and East German Malutka carrier. And yeah, you are more expensive than these guys here. So in general, I would put this into high C tier. You can use these, and just as saturation, they still do a decent amount of stress when they hit. And if you get enough of them, if you can get them into a good spot where the good stealth actually matters a good bit, they can still do some, but you can't really reliably use them as an aggressive weapon. You can't use them as a super reliable defender on their own. You always need them in a bit of a swarm situation, and that doesn't feel great. So they are functional. I would put them behind the ATGM teams though, actually, and maybe above the AT weapons here. That's about right. The BRDM Conquerors, on the other hand, which we have in all the nations as well, is a good bit better. That's a pretty fast unit. It has the good stealth, and it only costs you 17 points whilst having some armor. And yeah, being pretty fast, 85 kilometers off-road, good stealth, 20 damage missile. Yeah, it's not quite as cost efficient as these guys. And it doesn't quite have the kill capabilities of these guys, but yeah, it's pretty okay. And then the Conquerors M, if we compare that to the Mephisto that we just talked about, it has 1 less damage, and it has 10% less accuracy, whilst being the exact same price. Plus, it has 2 hit points less. VAB Mephisto for some reason has 8. This thing only has 6. So for the same price, it is weaker. I would put it above the BRDM 2 Conquerors though, as the damage here matters. And here you have a 15-point price jump. Here you only have a 10-point price jump. And then if it would be 75 points here for the Conquerors, I would also slightly put them ahead. But with this, yeah, it's close. And they're around here in A tier. Solid little AT weapons. Then we come to the tracked AT carriers, and there we have a lot of NATO once again. Wheeled one was a bit more packed. The tracked one is a lot more NATO. And we start with the French one. And the French one is the AMX-10 Hot. And the AMX-10 Hot is bringing around the same great Hot 2 missile that we just talked about up here with the Mephisto. It carries 12 rounds, so that's good as well. It is not as fast as the Mephisto, but it has 3 frontal armor, and it has smoke. And that means that it is a better prowler than the Mephisto, and it isn't quite as fast. You can't quite hunt around. You can't quite use it as much of a mobile, just chaser kind of unit. But on the defense, it's better, because in dangerous situation, you can smoke off. If you're in a position where you're around the tree line or so, you smoke off, disengage, and reposition that way. And it costs you 5 points less. So with all of that, I would say this thing at least goes here. And maybe 5 points less, it might even be better than the Humvee here. So, and with the smoke. So yeah, I would put the AMX-10 Hot here currently slightly better. Though, as both of these fill a slightly different role, if you can, in 5th plane day, bring both the VAB and the AMX-10 Hot. That's usually my experience, 1 card of each, and you are a bit more flexible in the roles. They slightly fit them different, and they're both good units. Then we come to the Strikers, which we have both in the Belgian and the British divisions. And the Striker is a 65 point unit. It's actually decently fast on-road and off-road for a tracked vehicle with 70 and 80. And the Swingfire is a hard-hitting missile with solid range. So smoke, hard-hitting missile, good ammo loadout with 10, good range. The only issue on this thing is the accuracy. 45% hurts. It's the Milan 1 kind of accuracy on a missile that really doesn't quite want to afford that. I still think, better than these guys here because of the smoke, and the missile actually does hit quite well. But it doesn't quite go up here where, like, the 20% drop in accuracy is pretty significant between these two. And the extra damage on the Hot is quite nice as well. Then we have a second unit that fires that weapon, and that is the FV438 Swingfire. It gets more rounds, gets 16 rounds, but it is slower, and it also has a lower salvo length, so its rate of fire is also a bit slower. So the Swingfire, in my eyes, is worse. The off-road speed dropping a hefty amount compared to the Striker is the hardest deficit. So I would put the Swingfire here a bit further down. And yeah, compared to these guys, that kind of makes sense in my eyes. So there we go. And then we have a couple more ones here. Let's start the TOW 2 families with the Dutch, where we have the YPR 765. That is a TOW 2 launcher that has smoke. It has okay speeds off-road and on-road. Only 2 frontal armor, so can't really take any damage. It has an MG, so that's also only a normal 7.6mm, which you never want to use, so not really an impact. And yeah, the 75 points are pretty fair. It's the same as the AMX-10 Hot there, price-wise. It's a bit slower, and it doesn't have the extra frontal armor, but it has the 1 extra temp damage on the missile. So I would put it up here, like, compared to this. It has more ammo than the TOW 2 Humvee. Doesn't have the good stealth of the Humvee. And yeah, actually the AMX-10 Hot I would still put behind the Humvee. The good stealth here on the Humvee TOWs is quite nice. The AMX-10 is faster and has one better frontal armor, so I still would put it slightly above the YPR, but it's pretty close there. And then we have the National Guards coming around with a TOW 2 on top of an M150 box. It has a 50 cal, but it is having the National Guard deficit. It is only 1 armor, and it is pretty slow. So all of that, especially with the National Guard, I would say puts it into the National Guard territory. Sure, you get a TOW 2 for a pretty cheap price, and it has smoke at least, but the slower speed and the National Guard deficits, I think, put it a bit lower here. Though the A tier still is good. And then M109 ITVs, starting with the ITO variant. This one, 2 armor, same speed as the M150 with 55% kilometers off-road, 75 on-road. Issue on this thing though, no smoke. No smoke is an issue, a real issue on these kind of vehicles, as they can't run as quickly as a wheeled one or so, and you sometimes just don't want to be in a position where they can be shot at. And I think that puts this thing, yeah, but I would maybe put it in here. It's not really great, but well, it's still a solid ATGM carrier, but it's not really something that you write home about. So solid B2 unit, unit that you can absolutely take, but don't feel great when you do. And the National Guard variant is similar. The extra stress damage on National Guard isn't as impactful. I still would put it a bit lower though, as the lower accuracy and higher aim time there are for sure still deficits. We have a TOW 2 variant as well. This one costing 75 points, just as the YPR, whilst not having smoke and being slower. So yeah, I think the TOW 2 is a decent upgrade there, missile-wise. Like, here you pay 20 points, here you only pay 15 points, so it's a solid upgrade, but it's still only an M109 without smoke and slow off-road speed, and that the platform keeps it back. It doesn't have good stealth or anything, which it maybe should get with how it tries to function, but yeah, it doesn't have that, and that's an issue. Now we come to a German ATGM carrier family, and here we start with the Jaguar 1, which is firing the slightly older Hot 1 with 20 rounds though. That is amazing. And the Hot 1 isn't having Milan 2 kind of accuracy, as it is at 50% accuracy, but it has a bit better pen and better range. So it's better than a Milan 2, in that part, but it doesn't have quite have the damage. It doesn't have the 24 damage. Unlike the Hot 2. It doesn't have quite the amazing accuracy there. But the extra range is nice. 65%. 65 points is pretty fair price. And it has decent speed, 60, 75. Not quite as fast as others, but it has smoke, and the more important, it has 6 frontal armor. And that 6 frontal armor means that it can survive a Milan 1 hit, it can survive a good amount of tank hits from long range, where it usually gets shot at from, and that makes this thing actually quite nice. The Jaguar, the Hot 1 Jaguar I would put around here. Yeah, maybe even above the M150 as its better survivability and no National Guard is quite nice. And then we have the Jaguar 2, and that pays 20 points, but it comes with a tow too. And it has 6 frontal armor, decent speed, and I would put this one up to here in A tier. The extra survivability on these things is so important whilst having smoke. So Jaguar, maybe even I would even put it into low S tier. Let's put it there. It is a pretty important tool in the divisions that get it. The 2 German divisions especially, but even in 11th ACAF, it can play a nice role. Like, you usually take this in the decks. It got nerfed a couple of times in the past, because it was completely busted for a time, but it's still really good. The TOW 2 is a fantastic missile, and having it on a decently surviving chassis with mediocre stealth is quite nice. Then we have 2 more German units, and we have the one outlier here in this tab. It's called an anti-tank unit here. It's an autocannon unit. But as it was in here, in the category, I put it in here. That's the Weasel Mark 20, even if it's only there to tell Eugen to fix that. Weasel Mark 20 got buffed in price. Ever since that, it is a nice unit. And I would put it in A tier here. So yeah, good autocannon. Let's put it back down here though. It doesn't really fit here. It's a good autocannon vehicle, a really nice one. It's not really an anti-tank vehicle. The more important brethren though is the TOW 2. And the TOW 2 Weasel is fast, 70 kilometers off-road, 80 kilometers on-road. It has 8 TOW 2s, and it has an MG3. MG3 not that important, it doesn't have smoke. It's a 75-point TOW 2 carrier without smoke, but decent speed. And the gun like the YPR, but worse armor. And I think that puts it around here. The TOW 2 on it is nice. It has good stealth though, actually, so no. I forgot about the good stealth. And the good stealth actually puts it here. Yeah, it's an A tier unit. Actually, I was like, this thing, I always use it. I wasn't quite sure where to put it in A tier. Forgot about the good stealth. And the good stealth is really kicking in hard for this thing. Weasel TOW 2 is fantastic. So Weasel TOW 2 goes into A tier here as the top end. Yeah, no smoke, but the extra stealth is more important than smoke here in my eyes, as you can get really nice ambushes with this thing. And it being 5 points cheaper than the Humvee, whilst having some slightly better survivability and only slightly lower speed, with only 5 less off-road speed, that's a nice thing. Same amount of ammo, has an MG. And then we come to the last one, which is a Soviet-tracked ATGM unit, and that's the Storm S. Storm S is a great missile, Cocon, fast-flying, 2,800 meter range missile. Not quite the same accuracy as as the Bastion, only 55%, but a bit more damage of 20. And 2,800 meter range is great. The issue of the Storm S is no smoke and relatively low accuracy for 85 points. It was back at 65 points in the past, and it was really, really strong there. For 85 points now, it's the same price. It's more expensive than the YPR or the Weasel TOW 2, but it's having a missile that hits a lot less and a lot less hard, and not having smoke, not having the same speed. And I think all of that pushed it into B tier. I would put it slightly above the Striker, as this is a purely defensive unit now, but it's still pretty good at that part, with its long range and a decent hitting missile. So MTLB Storm here, going into B tier. And yeah, that's the list. So let's zoom out here so that we can see it fully. And yeah, COCV and Jaguar there in S tier. Good amount of vehicles and couple of other units here in A tier, then a decent amount of B tier. C tier, yeah, a couple of units that are pretty close there that you could maybe calculate in there, but a decent amount of C tier, and yeah, a couple of units that you really should avoid. So with that said, guys, thanks for watching, and let me know what kind of tier list you want to see next, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.